All right, here we go.
Good evening, everybody. This is Seth Engelborg, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. We are meeting today, May 1st at 5 p.m. for a special meeting of the Conservation Commission. Purpose of this meeting is to discuss potential updates to regulations and procedures. Before we go to the agenda, we will start by confirming the attendance of members. Yeah, I see John. Members, when you hear your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mike Mizzarelli,
Here.
RJ Turcott,
Here.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Here.
Tim Brain,
Here.
John Schaefer,
Here.
and I'm here. So we'll go over our agenda tonight. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda? Thank you, Linda. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. We can't do roll call vote, so by voice vote, Mike Mizzarelli.
Aye.
You gotta do roll call,
Oh, yeah, we can't do voice
because
vote.
he's up there.
Yeah, we have to do roll call. So Mike Mizzarelli says aye. RJ Turcott.
Aye.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Joe Plandowski.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Tim
Brain, aye.
Tim Brain, sorry.
And it's been so long since we've all been in here.
This is a long table. Okay, that carries unanimously. The next is public comment. We have 0 attendees on Zoom or in the meeting live, so no public comment today. And then we'll move on to our public meeting. We have our agenda item to discuss potential updates to the Nantucket Wetland Protection Regulations and potentially scheduling a public meeting or public hearing to move forward with this. So just for context, the last version of the regulations was agreed upon last year in the end of June, and it went into place this year, January 1st, 2025. And as part of that update process, we've committed to have a meeting at least once annually to discuss potential changes or issues that may arise. This is the meeting to fulfill that requirement. It doesn't have to be the only meeting. If after this meeting we decide we want to talk later in the spring, we can. We've also scheduled something for October that could be used. So that's where we're at. At this point, Will, do you want to go over any updates about this?
Almost forgot I have to hit the button. So I don't have a super long list. I don't know if you want me to just jump into the quick 3 bullet points that I have written down.
Yep, you can do that.
And then, obviously, if anybody has anything else that we'd like to jump into, but I know that we maybe want to talk about coastal engineering structures. I'd like to potentially talk about like a better term to encompass things like the cliff stabilizers, not using the S word, something like temporary coastal stabilization device or temporary, obviously doesn't have to be that wording, but this is a will thought that just, I think the two things could be separated out somehow. Obviously, specifically, I'm like, the thing that has put this in my mind is those grids that we use.
Yeah.
I can't see something temporary like that as structure. I shouldn't say can't, but I'd like to try to separate them out. And that's kind of the office as well, you can imagine, is interested in that. Also I know we have talked about this multiple times, but we may want to dive into the 2-foot separation thing. What actually makes sense, if we can make it site specific, if we can find a way to answer this question. I had a note about talking about different consent items. This was from Linda. I'm also interested in adding debris removal as a specific item under minor activities. I feel like maybe that was overlooked, like if you've got just some stuff in the 100 to 50 that you can go grab and take out. So same thing, same buffer zone constraint as the rest of the minor activities, but basically I just want to add a point that says like rubbish, debris removal. These all have to be inspected and approved by Will, so like if we show up, we're not gonna get, or if I show up, I'm not gonna call something debris removal that needs to be like excavated and brush needs to be cut. I'm talking simple stuff. That's kind of that's my little list. So
Okay,
That's my list.
for process, are you like taking notes, or are we just gonna review the recording after?
I'm taking notes, but I always do both.
Okay, so the easiest thing, we'll start with the last thing first, because it's the easiest. Does anybody have any concerns about adding debris removal to the minor activity permit?
Yeah. He's gotta figure it out.
Yeah, so, we'll just first, while we're at it, so here's the things that are currently in the minor activity. Permit, it's things like vista cutting, and, all right, let's see, do we have a whole list of it somewhere?
I think I can list them out.
Yeah,
I can
go for
try
it.
while you're looking.
Yeah, go.
It's like establishment and maintenance of pervious, like grass paths,
Split rail fences.
split rail fencing,
The concrete.
removal of dead trees or clearance pruning, but it has to be approved by an arborist. I'm definitely missing one, but it's
Yeah,
Junk.
junk removal.
okay, all right.
Oh, there's invasive removal, I think.
Invasive removal, yeah. Okay,
Planting.
so nobody has any concerns about that other than wanting for some specific
Definition.
definitions on it. So I think anything that would require heavy machinery, get rid of that. And anything that could be considered a structure, not allow that. It would just be like landscape material, vegetation,
Milk carton.
yeah, trash and refuse, basically.
Yeah.
But we'll let you write what you
Yeah.
think.
Are we voting on that now, or do we have to have
No,
a public?
we
hearing?
can't vote on anything
Okay.
right now.
We're
This
just
is all
giving them direction?
conceptual right now.
Okay.
And then we will bring we'll have,
Public hearing.
yeah, we have to have town council review the changes, which is annoying for something like this, but they do have to do that. And then we would bring an entire update to a public hearing for questions, comments, concerns, and then if there were none, we could approve them, post it. You have to advertise it for 3 weeks, and then we could make an effective date at least 3 weeks later. Or if there were concerns, then we could have another hearing, but that's the basic process. We're not
The
approving.
policy is different. We don't have to advertise policy. 'Cause a couple
Policies
of
and
the things you want
procedures
to do
is-
Policies.
Yeah, we'll talk about regulations first and then
Okay.
policies and procedures second. Policies and procedures, are internal document. Nobody has to approve them except for us
Okay.
and the staff. But, well, they don't have to. We can tell Will to do whatever we want him to do, but it would be polite to let him chime in.
be polite. And
right.
I'll also, not to interrupt, but I'll send drafts of like anything that I'm drafting up as a result of this meeting, even just as a concept, I'll send it around so we can kind of see what I'm at least looking at.
Okay, all right, so let's go to coastal engineering structures now, because I think that's something that's been a big cause for concern, and we've already had some discussions on it. So right now, there is 2 definitions that come into play when you consider what's a structure and what's a coastal engineering structure. The structural definition is a combination of materials assembled at a fixed location to give support or shelter, such as a building, framework, retaining wall, platform, bin, radio, and antenna mast, or the like. And then there's a whole bunch of exceptions and specific things that are listed out. So I think I previously brought this up. I think we could fix this definition with 2 words. I think it could just be a combination of man-made materials permanently assembled at a fixed location.
Now, how's that different?
So that would be, so things like the dune guard and the coastal grids that the town was using, that would mean they're not a structure because they're temporarily at a fixed location. I mean, they are anchored into the bank, right? But if you look at the application, they're meant to be there for a specific amount of time to establish the dune and they build up sand and then be pulled out.
Isn't it more dangerous to pull them out, though? Doesn't it disrupt everything they just did?
No, I mean, the auger or the screw is so small that, like, yes, you have to be careful, but it's meant to just start the process of stabilization, but not be the actual act of the stabilizing.
Because the thing in the office is probably 3 feet wide.
Yeah, but if you look at the screw, it's just a little.
I know the screw.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
So in theory, geotubes aren't permanent. Everybody knows they'll be taken out someday. So how do you distinguish, kind of long-term temporary from short-term?
Require
Yeah,
rules.
so here's the thing. So this is meant to deal with any things that are not specifically listed. So under structured coastal engineering, geotextile fabric is specifically already called a coastal engineering structure. This is meant to deal with any emerging technologies or things that aren't listed one way or the other.
What about choir rules?
COAR rules, we've had problem with
Yeah.
right now because there's some opinions that they are coastal engineering structures and there's some opinions that they're not. That's why putting man-made materials, or maybe that's not the right word,
Yeah,
but
man-made's
man-made is problematic, but
problematic.
it could be something like that, non-naturally occurring materials. Coir is a coconut fiber.
Right.
It would be made of that natural fiber. It would not be considered a structure because of that.
Okay.
But if you rolled up a bunch of plastic sheeting and then you anchored it to the bank, that would be a coastal engineering structure, even if it didn't have sand in it, or if you just made a coir terrace basically with plastic instead of with coir, now it's a structure. So that's my thoughts, but I'm one person on this commission, so what do people think?
Wooden structure, they're not coming through.
Yep. So like multiple rows of fencing is called out on, well, actually, maybe we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about what structured coastal engineering says. So that says any structure intended or constructed so as to prevent or alleviate storm damage or modify tidal action, wave flow, littoral flow, or erosion. Examples include bulkhead, revetment, seawall, riprap, groin, jetty, artificial seaweed, geotextile fabric, plastic or steel sheeting, multiple rows of fencing, or fencing with a greater than 4-inch width or diameter. Those
So
are all
that's considered
covered.
structures.
Yeah, if you use one row of sand-drift fence with a wood post that's less than 4 inches in width, that is still a structure, but it's not a coastal engineering structure.
Okay.
If you,
So it's a different standard applied to each one.
yes,
Yeah, I got it.
if you use, if you went and build a fence with big 4x4, or let's say 6x6 posts with a bunch of boards in between them, that would be a coastal engineering structure because of the materials that you're using.
And that thing up in Dionis, the zigzags, it's
That's
heavier
considered-
than any fence on the main.
Yeah, that's
road.
considered not a coastal engineering structure because it has gaps and the posts are less than 4 inches wide.
But you couldn't knock that thing over with a tractor.
I could knock it over with a tractor.
Those things are, those aren't your
What kind
little,
of
those aren't
tractor,
your
yeah.
little drift fences anymore. That's an actual structure. But
Yeah.
that- We're not considering that a coastal engineering structure. Those are the ones that bother me the most, is those things.
I mean, we can do anything here. That's our role. If
It wouldn't
there's
make
a,
sense then.
if there is a reason to consider something like that, a coastal engineering structure, we can.
Those things are mammoth.
I just think like something like that, which has holes in it and is meant for sand to pass in and out,
Yeah.
saying that's a structure and saying Coir Terrace is not a structure, that's crazy in my,
Well,
in my head, but
the only issue with those things is that they're built better than some houses here.
What would make choir terrace a structure? Like if you coupled it up with other materials?
Coastal engineering structure versus structure.
So
coastal
if we
engineering
change the
structure.
definition of structure to the words I'm saying, it won't be a structure at all.
Okay.
It won't meet the definition of structure, and then it won't meet the definition of coastal engineering structure, because in order to be a coastal engineering structure, it has to be a structure first. Something like the fence meets the definition of a structure,
But not a coastal.
but doesn't meet the definition of coastal engineering structure.
I'm comfortable with the language you're adding. I think that sort of
Yeah, I
does
can-
what we've been having a problem, going back and forth between the choir, between the geotubes, between those fences. I think that works for me.
RJ, Tim, Joe, Mike?
I still wonder, we're defining what a structure is. I still wonder if the permanency dimension is something.
I can't hear Tim.
You gotta
Oh,
turn your
John.
Turn your
microphone
thing
on.
Oh,
I
yeah, sorry.
Can't hear
John.
Tim.
Sorry.
Oh, there you
Sorry.
go. Thanks.
In addition to defining what a structure is, should there be is there any value in defining how temporary something is as to whether it's permitted or not?
Yeah, I mean, I guess temporary and permanent is up to interpretation. Everything is temporary on Nantucket, you know, in the long scale of
True.
things. I think we can get past that pretty easy though, because people are applying for like 3-year permits. So I think if we just say a combination of non-naturally occurring materials assembled at a fixed location for more than 1 year, that way things like the dune guard or the dune stabilizers that are meant to put up for 1 season and then move around, that would fix all of our problems. That means, you know, that's saying it's temporary, but it's saying that it's what the specific amount of temporariness is.
I'm comfortable with that.
Same.
Yeah, I'm not willing to put a time limit on it. Temporary, as you just said, it's temporary. But if we put a year's time on it, then they're back in here again. And then we gotta consider it a coastal engineering structure at that point. That's why I'm not willing to put a time limit on it. I like the idea of this is the type of thing we're talking about.
No,
Makes
it
sense.
wouldn't require that. So like, for instance, the town application, if they wanted to do that in 2025 and then again in 2026, they wouldn't have to reapply because there's been a break in when they take it out. I guess we could say,
That's what I was
I guess we could say,
Yeah, I don't wanna put a year on it.
I guess we could say for more than 1 year continuously or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know. We can figure out what the exact wording is, but it's basically, or it could be, you know, 3 years if we want, because that's the most typical permit timeline. I mean,
I'd be more
whatever.
comfortable with that, the same that we have for everybody else.
We could just say, yeah, a combination of non-naturally occurring materials assembled at a fixed location for more than 3 years to give support or shelter.
Yeah.
That's the structure.
I think that makes sense. I kind of had that specific question because of that project, obviously, because it's sort of a pilot, and I'm not sure, but I would imagine we might want to deploy more if in like certain areas of the project area. That was the worst way to say that. That was so confusing. But like say they have some empty spots in the project area, they might want to put some more out next year. It's still
Yeah.
temporary, there's a break in the middle, but
Although I do think we should split up where we're putting this definition. So in structure, it should be a combination of non-naturally occurring materials assembled at a fixed location.
Okay.
And then in coastal engineering structure, it should be any structure intended or constructed, or intended to be used for more than a 3-year timeline, something like that. We'll have to look at the language, but if we put the time consideration in structure, it's gonna do a lot of weird things to other structures that aren't coastal engineering structures.
Yeah.
People are gonna start to like say, oh, my dry late stone patio that I'm applying for, I'm just gonna apply for it for 2 years, and then I'm gonna rip it out in 2 years and put it somewhere else.
Not
So,
happening.
yeah, so we have to be careful about what we're doing, but Or we could just have an exception in coastal engineering a second sentence somewhere in there, but that's the intent of, we'll figure out where to put it, or Jeff will help us out
Well,
too.
the
But
definition of temporary is lasting for a limited time, I mean Merriam-Webster, but there's adjectives, add interim, provisional, short-term, impermanent, provisionary, interim, and.
yeah, yeah, we'll figure, I mean, that's the
Advisory.
intent of this discussion. We can figure out what the exact words and what
Yeah.
the exact placement of it is. But does that sound okay with everybody?
Yeah,
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Thanks, John. So then getting to your point about the specific calling out of test projects, I think if we get these definitions really well vetted, then we won't need it at all. But in the Wetlands Protection Act, there's a whole section about test projects. I think we can just,
I might have misspoke too, because I was just saying like, I would want their permit to still give them the ability to revisit next season, but not even anything specific to test projects.
yeah, so I think we could add another definition if we want, that was about test projects, that
specifically test projects.
was specific about test projects that are
What is a
basically.
test project? Is that thing that they did 10 years ago in Hummock Pond where they started getting rid of the invasive species? CPC paid for that. That was a test project for us anyway. Was that type of test project you're talking about?
So we'll have to define what it means. Basically, if you look at the Wetlands Protection Act, we're probably not gonna use the same wording in there, but they're basically looking at it to be any new technologies that haven't been used in the state or your region before,
Okay.
that you're not necessarily sure if they meet the performance standards or not, because you just
Right.
don't know. And so it's meant to give some flexibility for like temporary pilot installations of things that people are testing. But we can figure out what the exact language of that is. I think that's something we shouldn't do today at this meeting. That's something that the staff and council probably should look at together.
Okay.
Was there anything else that you had on your list that I forgot?
No,
Oh, the 2-foot separation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I know
And
Commissioner
placards.
Turcott has some things that he'd like to bring to this meeting, and we'll give everyone else a chance to. What was
I
there a
want it
thing?
gone.
I have on my list, I think 2 people brought up that we want placards. But
Yes.
I think that's more procedures,
The
my
little things
bad.
that sit in front of us
I
that
think-
tell us who we are?
Yeah, I think I'm the only one left, or maybe Mike has one, but,
I may have one. I've been around long enough.
okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, so the 2-foot separation thing, I think we have an excellent opportunity to use the funds that are in the commission's coffers
We have
to,
money.
oh yeah, we have a lot of money. To hire a outside reviewer to give, who is a hydrologist or hydrogeologist, to give some
Unbiased opinion.
unbiased opinions about
how about
that performance standard and what they think, especially in the light of adding resiliency and climate change as a protected interest. I think,
Maybe a case-by-case basis, it could be something else, but to blanket because somebody got pissed off at a project,
yep, yeah, Linda,
the
we
2-foot thing is ridiculous.
we all
to me.
know your thoughts on
Well, I just
this.
happened to be standing there when they did it, and it was just like, I could not believe it.
So I think, as I mentioned before, there is really good reasons to have
Something.
depth to groundwater separation distance. I'm not sure 2 foot is the right amount or not, or I think it does really definitely vary by project and the location and the conditions on site.
Yeah.
But yeah, Will, can we commission a geologist or hydrologist to look into that for us?
We may have to vote on that because of expenditures of funds.
I don't think we can vote on it.
I'll find
today. I think
out,
we have
but
to
not
vote on
today.
it at the public
Or we
hearing.
can do it, yeah.
I think we have to vote on the public hearing. Any votes for this have to all be at the public hearing.
Yeah, so I'll look into that. I love this idea, first of all.
Yeah.
I think I've said this outside of meetings a bunch of times, but if I knew for a fact that 2-foot separation was like just a little bit more than it needs to be and it was blanket, just a little bit more than it needs to be everywhere, I'd be more than happy with that. But in all honesty, have no idea if that number's way too much or not enough, and
It was
it
arbitrary.
has to be, in my mind, it's gotta be site-specific.
Yeah, and some sites it's definitely not enough, and in some
Yeah.
sites it's probably way too much,
Way
and
too
it's
much.
probably
Yep.
irrelevant because you have a
Yep.
locally perched, little redoxomorphic feature that's not actually doing anything, but yeah, I mean, it has to be site specific, so let's get, an outside review if we can, to have somebody develop or to give us ideas about how to develop a plan to have here's the thing about performance standards. They need to be clear enough and easy to understand by the public and applicants
Yeah.
while providing the guidance that we need to have each site. So, I mean, I have my thoughts, I'm sure the town staff has thoughts, and then, I'm sure other commissioners have thoughts, but I think this is something that we should get a third-party opinion on.
And it could be, we don't have to invent that wheel. Vineyard's gotta have it, some of the caves, Plum Island, there are places, Norwell, right on the water, that probably have some language to deal with something like this.
They
Not
do,
the
but
only
it's
ones.
tough to find the
Comparable?
scientific. I told you guys, it's been a lot of sun today. The scientific explanation for why, like
Yeah.
how they've come up with the number that they use. So
Yeah.
I would love to see the result of this.
Yep.
Big time.
So that's that one.
Yeah, and we'll have to check with Jeff and town about the processes. So like, for
There's a
instance, when
way.
you get a third-party review for an application, it's paid for directly by the applicant. But for this, it would be paid by the commission through the funds that we collect from fee filing.
Just keep in mind that if we have money right now, this fiscal year ends in June 30th, so if we wanna spend money, we should do
Yeah.
Get
it
it out
for
there.
that.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. So let's try to get Jeff's opinion tomorrow at the office and then go from there.
Cause it was funny, he was there when it was one of his projects that this happened to.
It was his project, yes. I know the exact project. I know
Yeah, we do.
too much about this history of this
Same.
thing. I'd rather not, but yeah, let's go that way. That's I think the scientifically
Yeah.
And regulatory best way to
Then we
proceed.
have a basis for making that decision.
Yep. Okay, and that's all the things on your list, Will?
That's what I've got.
Except for policy stuff.
No, hold on, we have other commissioners who want to talk about things. So Commissioner Turcott has some things he wanted to talk over before we get to that. Do other commissioners have anything that they want to add to this list?
Or just the policy thing about.
Yeah,
blanket
we'll
vote.
do the policies after, just for regulations.
Yes.
Okay, go
No.
ahead.
Think so.
Do you have a lot of them, or?
Two.
Okay, go ahead.
Is your microphone on?
Put your microphone on.
One of the items that we talked about at least a year ago or so is that the Conservation Commission holds parcels totaling 25 acres. And either I was asleep and something was decided, or it's still an open issue.
I have an answer to that. So,
Yeah.
at the town, might have been special town meeting of 2024, the select board authorized, the town meeting authorized the sale or transfer of those parcels to the Landmakers Concert Trust. But they had to go to the legislature for this, the state's vote. The legislature did nothing with them. And now they're back on the warrant for the 2025 town meeting this Saturday.
Yeah.
So please go and vote for that. We voted as a commission to authorize the town to dispose of those parcels.
I remember this.
The town meeting voted to dispose of those parcels. The select board is intending to dispose of those parcels, but the state won't let us dispose of those
And they're all in
parcels.
Wisconsin, right?
No.
All right.
There is Grove Lane, it's our biggest holding.
Yep,
No Bottom Pond, is
No
that the
Bottom
Grove
Grove
Bottom
Line?
Pond, it's
Yeah.
like 15, 16 acres.
yeah.
There is one parcel on Long Pond Drive, and one parcel that's basically in the ocean off of Nantucket at this point. I don't know if actually any land is left on that
I
parcel.
think that one's gone.
Chicago,
Lines are still there on the
Chicago,
map.
the lines are there in Chicago Street, yeah.
Sitting in the middle of the water.
Last year we talked about it, I think it was like 90% underwater, and I think this year it might be 100% underwater.
I'm gonna go ahead and say yes.
I have a question.
And, well, hold on one second, and then there's 3 other, holdings that were unaccounted for, and I discovered the reason why. It's because they're road layouts. So there's a road layout in Ames Ave, or two road layouts in Ames Ave maybe, and I think one road layout somewhere in Sconset, but
They're small.
yeah, they're small. But anyways, we're trying as a commission to dispose of those parcels to other groups who would be much better at conserving and stewarding
You
them.
might want to tell him, so people know that, how do we get these parcels?
They were all donated to the Conservation Commission or town. The No Bottom Palm parcel was specifically donated for with a restriction that it would be permanently held in conservation use. But donating or just transferring it to the land bank will fulfill the wish of that restriction.
We may have been the only entity at the time that had conservation in our mission, as opposed to, depending how long ago it was, so that NCF and
Yeah,
Land Bank may not have.
yeah, no,
position to do
those other organizations existed, or at least some of them, but I mean, I have the whole history if people really care. I think I've mentioned it before, but I have the historical records of each parcel. Essentially, these people wanted the Conservation Commission to hold them because they thought that that was the best entity at the time to do so. And as things have changed over time, it's been clear that we're not the best entity to do so, and that there are plenty of better organizations on Nantucket that would be much better served.
Land management.
Well, if it passes a town meeting, we need to have a conversation with Julian,
Yeah.
whoever our representative is up there, to put it through.
Yeah, so
My
Tim, what's your
question is-
question?
My question is, do we know whether the state didn't approve it because they had a problem with it, or they just
They
didn't?
just didn't get to it.
They just didn't
never
get to
looked
it.
at
They
it.
just don't care about it enough to make it a major issue with all of the
It's gotta
home
go
rule.
through committee, it's gotta go out to the general, and then you got a
This-
second reading, a first reading, and all this other crap that goes with it.
The
And they don't get it by July 1, we're out.
Congress is pretty overworked, and they always get mad at this number of home rule petitions we sent to them in the first place.
Especially coming from Nantucket.
So,
Yeah.
we have a
Bad reputation.
we have a
for
bad
home rule-
reputation
home
of home rule
petitions.
petitions. So it's not anything like it's controversial. It just logistically didn't make the docket for last year.
We just have to put a little bit more pressure on it to actually get it done this time.
Okay, anyone else have questions on that one?
I thought you were moving on.
No, we can if we're good on that. So
If
yeah,
we
Joe,
kill
go,
that one, that one's dead.
Joe, go ahead.
The second one is in rummaging through a bunch of paperwork on fines and all the rest, enforcement issues, I came across something that I found interesting. It's one sentence. The Conservation Commission Act of 1957 also directs the Conservation Commission to coordinate the activities of unofficial bodies organized for resource protection. What does that mean?
It means that we could start a coalition of nonprofit entities and direct them to do what we think we want them to do. Would they listen to, would they listen to us at this
Yeah,
point?
that would go over like a lead balloon.
1957 was a very
Everybody's
different
Very
time.
territorial about here.
Yeah,
They're
it
gonna
was a
listen
very
to us.
different time. I've mentioned before, people assume that the Conservation Commission's primary role is in wetland regulatory function. On Nantucket, it has historically been, but it's not the only role. Conservation Commissions also have a role in open space acquisition, protection, education, and stewardship. In a lot of towns, Conservation Commissions hold lots of land and open them up for recreational and educational purposes. Our municipality has not done that because it's not, frankly, not required. I think there's 10 different environmental conservation nonprofits on Nantucket, at least 10. And maybe it's closer to 15 if you count like some of the smaller land trusts in there. So we have historically over time spent less effort there and more in wetland regulatory permitting because other organizations are doing that for us. We have a wide range of authority and ability to do all that stuff if you wish. But we have historically not done that. Even things like the open space and recreation plan, which in every municipality other than Nantucket is directed by the Conservation Commission. On Nantucket, we let our open space and recreation plan be done by the NP and EDC. Because
Actually, the planning board.
actually the planning board,
They're the ones that do the master plan,
the
because I
planning-
helped write the last one.
yeah, the planning board actually is the planning board has to authorize it and vote on it. And then the select board has to, but actually the NP and EDC historically has been the one that did all the work.
Well, I did all the area plans too, which is under NPD, EDC. But the master plan we did in-house at the
Yeah.
planning board level.
Yeah. So anyways, there's a lot of things we don't do here on Nantucket that other municipalities do. Yeah, Will, go ahead.
I was just gonna say too, I can't back this up other than looking at the application loads for other conservation commissions, but I think the other special sauce that got added into the mix over the years on Nantucket is our sheer volume of applications that this conservation commission seems to be primarily a permitting board. If sometimes,
Yeah.
just for fun, I look at even Cape Towns, or where I grew up, there's like one application every
I look at
month.
the Sharon
So
Mass.
they get to do a lot of
Other stuff.
different stuff, and often they like the natural resources department will have a staff of land management people.
yeah.
So they'll have these holdings, and then their staff will actually manage the land. Trust me, I would love to do that, but that's not where we
Yeah, I look at the Sharon Mass where I grew up and they have like one meeting a month with like two applications on there.
Wow, that would not be us.
So, I mean, I am still trying to find the historical records because the Concom Act was enacted in 1957. I think Nantucket voted to adopt the Conservation Commission in 1963, and then the Wetland Protection Act didn't go into place until 1972. So in that decade, they did something. I don't know what they did, but I would love to find the historical records. But I've asked around town and nobody has them. So we could keep trying. But
Well,
yeah.
actually, if you go into the town clerk, they have the annual reports, and every one of these entities are supposed to do an annual report.
That's true,
And
yeah.
they tell you what they did and all this, and who was on it, because I had to do the ZBA one for 25 years, so you might as well, they've got them, they got those town reports in the safe all the way back.
Sounds
They've all-
good. But anyways, that's kind of the overall reasons why we've done less in the open space and recreation realm on Nantucket. But I mean, we are authorized to do a lot. I think we have had opportunities over the years that we have squandered, like opportunities to write comment letters or weigh in on projects that aren't in a wetland but are going to cause significant environmental change. There's been a few recently that we didn't comment on, but we should have.
We commented on the windmills, didn't we?
Um,
I think we commented on something.
we commented on the right
Whale.
whales.
Oh, yeah, the
There was
highline.
never there's never comment made on the offshore wind projects. There's never comment made on some of the large commercial development projects that are out here.
Well, we should comment on these things,
I think so as well, but
especially when it deals with multiple acres of habitat and stuff like that.
yep, yeah. So I think, we do need to be mindful of that, but it's not really in the regulations. That's just in the other part of our capacity.
I wasn't proposing we do that. That's like When I thought about it, I said, that's herding cats.
I mean, I've proposed before that we should do it, so maybe it's just me who thinks that, but. Does that answer everyone's questions on that? Okay, anyone else before we go to RJ?
How long are you gonna take, Seth?
I'm not too long. RJ, it's your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to tie this up on a future date. But speaking of sheer volume, I've been doing a lot more reading than I expected of the DEP Enforcement Handbook and the MACC Conservation Commission Handbook dealing with enforcement. It's because of some of the stuff we've been dealing with, but there are a lot of things that we could be doing that we're just not right now, like assigning one of us, and Tim might have volunteered, to help staff, because logically, if we have the most projects coming through, we are going to deal with more enforcement than any of our my hometown of Millbury, Massachusetts, with paltry 13 projects last year. But appointing someone to help will keep track of this giant spreadsheet and coming up with the enforcement action plan, which I drafted one that we can talk about, which is things we're already doing, but memorialized so that we can put it on the website. Yeah, it's a nice flow chart. It's publicly available, and then doing some education so that the public, we can reach out to NARAB and homeowners once or twice a year and explain, this is what we do. If you're doing any work in this area, you'd have to come for a permit or an RDA or whatever, because it's arcane to us and we meet on it and talk about it all the time. And we would have less enforcement if we solidified this plan and got it out there to the public. And we'd still have to deal with enforcement, but it would also lessen the confusion on what happens when we get a tip or we see something, or you go to do a certificate of compliance and it's not in compliance. It's a plug and play plan based on our town, because most conservation commissions aren't dealing with a local bylaw. They're dealing with just the state act. It's a minority. We're in the minority of having a local regulation on top of it. And there's a lot of confusion for people. You get people like, I picture my father just building a shed where he wasn't supposed to and not realizing it. And we could do a lot to assuage that and save us a lot of volume by clarifying things and then educating everybody. And it'll make it easier for us on what is the least fun part of the wetlands, which is the enforcement stuff. So I just supplied in an email some of the stuff that's relevant, but I think we should have another meeting to go over and talk about like what we think would work. There are obviously nuance to it, what triggers what, how long, what we want where, all that stuff. But it would save us a lot of hassle, and I think it would save a lot of headaches for the public if we were crystal clear on that.
You looking for another job?
Tim volunteered.
Yeah, so actually, I want to talk about that a little bit. So I think the idea of having an enforcement coordinator is good, but I think we should do it in the same vein as a committee appointment. I know it's not a committee, but I think it actually should be, you get nominated or volunteer for it, and that you at the meeting when we designate those people actually are voted, and it would make it much more official. And then when you show up to a property, you know, you've been officially voted as that person. Yes, go ahead.
Technical. John, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure we have a preparing live stream window up, but everything's showing that it's streaming. It's just
Yeah,
a
I think
computer
it
glitch.
changed.
All right, we're
I do-
Okay, yes, Joe, do you have a comment?
I do have a comment, and that is that the current Wetlands Enforcement Manual is probably one of the better written government documents I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is really clear. It is very well done.
It is unfortunately from 2004,
Yes, November of 2000.
but so it is showing its age. But and DEP, the one before that was in 1994, and they had committed to updating it every 10 years, but now we're pushing 2 decades without an update. The font and visual style is definitely very early 2000s.
Jarring.
But it is well written for sure. So any points on either the enforcement action plan or creating an enforcement coordinator? Or do you think we should just schedule a meeting to do that? Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea in the respect that, I know we talk about it a lot at this table, like that everybody should know, but in my opinion, the public does not know a lot about where they're permitted to do work, so I do believe it would be helpful. I certainly would like to have like in-depth discussion about enforcement coordinator, because we'd really have to put some parameters around what the details are for that.
Yeah, and I'm a little worried because I don't know if our bylaw actually allows for that. I mean, I looked at what RJ put or sent over, and I looked into MACC, but our bylaw specifically only allows 3 positions to be created: a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So we would probably have to do another town meeting update to add that language in
Or
there.
we can have whatever subcommittees we want.
Yeah, we can create subcommittees, but if we're creating a
Subcommittee
subcommittee,
of one.
it would have to be, it would have to go through the whole legal process of posting and all that. So I think that's a council issue as well, but yeah, Will,
Yeah,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, I am 1,000,000% happy to look into the legality of that with legal counsel, or even if there's a less official way that we could achieve the same thing and just say, we're nominating this person to be the sort of unofficial point person to team up with staff on enforcement. Like if you could designate so I'll look into that. I had another comment that we can hold if we want to keep talking about this, because it's more about public outreach stuff. Just an idea, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think having council look into the legality makes sense, but yeah, Tim, go ahead.
It's just a question that's sort of related. When Concom has that order of conditions and says, you've got to move this shed from here to here, we don't really have a mechanism for following up to see if they did it, right?
No, yeah,
CFC.
so if they apply for a certificate of compliance and Will goes out to the site and checks to make sure they did everything right, here's the weird part of the process. You can technically roll the dice and never apply for a COC. That's why we get,
Yeah.
that's why we get certificates of compliance that are for orders that like expired 20 years ago. But here's the thing. That order gets recorded on your deed. So if you ever want to sell your property, transfer your property, subdivide it, do anything really, it has to be cleared out with a certificate of compliance before you do any of that. So eventually, everything either gets a certificate or it doesn't. But, during the period where the order is active, commission staff and commissioners can visit the site whenever they want to determine if the project is in compliance. The applicant or the permit holder at this point, actually, they agree to that in the order of conditions. They legally sign a general condition that says commission staff and commissioners have the legal ability to access the site. So if you think something's wrong, you can go, or I would recommend you ask who else to go with you, but you're allowed to go on that property if there's an active order. Yeah, Will, go ahead.
So, before I even go, anywhere with a DEP sign, you're clear. I love going anywhere, so you can always call me and we can roll up in an official vehicle, but.
It just, I mean, I know people aren't doing this, but it is for the purposes of commission business only.
Yeah.
Don't just go somewhere because you want to like use their beach if they have a DEP sign. Yeah, it's for commission purposes, but.
Me makes a lot of random visits to places, especially anywhere that seems like a interesting, for lack of a better term, project. But I was also just gonna jump in that it's been a while since we've had one of these, so knock on wood, but we do get ancient COCs once in a while that we show up and something's a little funky. or they never submitted monitoring reports or whatever. And we've had some interesting situations with that. Again, it's been a minute.
Yeah,
But-
I've authorized a couple with two-digit file numbers. I still haven't seen anything with one digit.
Yeah.
Hopefully none of those are left, but
Wow.
we do get them that are from the 80s or
I think the oldest
Late
one I've
70s.
closed, because I do a lot of this closing permits and stuff, I think the oldest lack of compliance certificate was maybe 30 years old.
yeah. They're out there. Some of
They're
them
out
are out there.
And if the property hasn't transferred, you're not gonna catch it, but when it transfers, they're gonna do a title search. They're gonna see that you have these orders and you have no certificate of compliance.
And
That's usually
you're-
when I get called.
Yeah, you're required to
Yeah.
get
Close them out.
everything closed out before the transfer. Or I guess technically the purchaser could purchase at their own risk, but nobody's doing that.
Not with the amount of money that's
Yeah, nobody's doing that.
going on these days.
But anyways, so that should clear things up on that.
It's not perfect, but
But compliance isn't just, compliance and enforcement is an issue at the planning board level, the zoning board level, the Concom level, because there's just not enough staff and not enough hours in the day to catch everybody.
And I do think we want to leave the compliance, on the burden of the compliance to prove it on the applicant. We want to be careful not to create extra work for staff, but
Yes, yeah. I think it's more for dealing with, projects or properties where it's clear something isn't right, or it's clear that something has doesn't feel right, maybe it's when you go to the site, it's all fine, but if there's some evidence that something is odd going on, this is what would be triggering this type of process. And the flow chart that Commissioner Turcotte put together kind of lays some of that out as well. So I think because of the nature of this, we have to get Will and Jeff and town council to talk about it a little bit. And I think we should schedule a separate public meeting, not a hearing, to actually discuss all the details of what comes out of that. And then we could combine the details of that with the details of the rest of the regulatory updates when we have the one public hearing. But I think that should be talked about in a public meeting process first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, would we like to schedule said public meeting right now?
Well, let him finish first. How many public meetings are we gonna have to have?
I don't know that it's gonna, I think we'll have a little back and forth on like what goes where in that flow chart, but I don't know that we're gonna need to have multiple meetings. And again, we're gonna have 2 meetings a year where we're gonna talk about these things. And if we do put it together and decide that, well, this part of it doesn't work, then we'll have that opportunity. I would like to see if council could be present for this meeting, because I feel like there are a bunch of questions. Like I have questions about how it interacts with the 2 bylaws interact with each other and all of that.
Okay, so how about we'll do this? Will, can you talk to Jeff and see council's availability, and then can you send out some potential options for special meeting dates in our off weeks, and then we can figure it out?
That stupid thing you
Yes.
sent the last
no,
time
no,
that I
no,
can't
don't say it.
respond
Yeah,
to?
don't say it. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Linda, can I please use a doodle poll?
Set that thing out.
That's exactly what you were just telling me not to use, but it makes it so much easier.
Doodle poll.
A doodle poll.
I couldn't stand that thing. I couldn't figure it out.
Well, Will cannot stand 700 different emails back and forth so
Right.
that I can mark it on like a physical calendar. I'll use a
other
doodle poll.
things.
If anybody has any issue with the doodle poll, just call me.
There are better
fill it out for you.
services
There are
than
better
Doodle.
ones.
Seth is gonna tell me better services than doodle.
Because I've got other meetings that use other programs.
But
I know,
I'm-
we'll
I'm
do
fine
something
with
better, but.
I'm fine with having a scheduling poll. So here's my my suggestion, though. We have 3 commissioners whose terms expire on June 31st.
That's
Yes,
great. You,
We have Mike, myself, and Joe.
Oh,
June 30th.
June 3rd.
June 30th, but
Or July 1st.
Your response is due in the next
No,
week or
it's
two.
June 30th at midnight.
Yeah,
At midnight on July 1st, you're no longer commissioner.
but the letters are going out to you guys here shortly, so you need to.
Yes, the letters have already been sent
Have they
out.
been sent out? Okay, respond.
So, those commissioners may choose to reapply or they may choose not to. If they do choose to reapply, they may or may not be reappointed. So my suggestion is that we try to schedule these meetings as much as possible before the end of June.
Right.
It might not be entirely possible to have everything done because it's already May 1st and that is only 60 days away. But to the extent possible, I would appreciate that we get some of these in if we can.
You're reapplying.
I've already sent the letter in.
I sent mine.
Okay.
Nice.
But, we shall see how things go.
Make sure they got it
Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. And just super fast too, I'll talk more about this later, but I think we could be making good use of the NRD Instagram. And I can get a day every week that either I make a random conservation related post or we have a Concom related thing that we might want to share. That just popped into my head. It's something I've been thinking about. If we go down the road of like more specific enforcement meetings and trying to get some stuff out there, i.e. that, our Instagram has pretty good engagement and we can use that for free and then go from there. But I also just want to try to use that more in general, and I think we could take advantage of that.
I would say that's your prerogative. What
Yeah, whatever
what the
works.
NRD department does, they do. We don't have say over that.
What I mean? Sorry, I just meant like, if we have ideas that are specific to us, that we want to get stuff out there, I'm the conservation agent, I work for the NRD, I can post whatever I want. I think it'd be maybe useful to us in the future, but just specifically to this too.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right,
Do
so you'll get us a scheduling poll with the dates possible from now to the end of June. And at this point, any other regulation updates that people want to talk
You
about?
got any more?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I talk about streams? Can we talk about streams yet?
We can talk about streams.
Oh, stream.
Go ahead.
We have a couple. And I just think that we should acknowledge that they are streams in the regulations.
right.
And just at least
So here's the
I know
thing.
there's one.
So
I won't win it.
the Wetlands Protection Act talks about rivers and riverfront area, which Nantucket has none of.
You got streams.
We have streams. In order to protect those streams beyond the way that they're already protected, so beyond resource areas like bordering vegetated wetland or vernal pool or land subject to flooding that they're probably already in. The only way to protect them with some additional performance standards would be to create a new resource area called streams or stream habitat. I'm open to the possibility of that, but we would have to discuss what that means, what the performance standards, well, what the protected interests are, what the performance standards are, and if it actually does anything for us. Because I think, all the streams that I know of are gonna be mapped in areas that are already in some other resource area.
They're wetlands. They go
There,
in and out of
but
wetlands.
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of like the major ones like Squam Brook and Phillips Run and Millbrook and the Pulpus Culvert thing.
There's one running through my former client's property out in Wawinnet on the corner.
Yeah.
On Pocomo and Wawinnet.
Yep,
It
that's
just
the
keeps
one
right on
that,
going.
that's the
Comes
one
from
that
over
was
there and
triggered
keeps
in the
going.
application that I think RJ was concerned about.
Yeah, that one
So,
runs
yeah.
all year. Low, but it's still there.
So yeah, I mean, there's a good point, I think, to be made to look into it. The first thing to do would be to write the definitions of that area, to write the protected interests of that area, and then to write the performance standards of that area. We're obviously not going to do that tonight.
No.
Is the whole paragraph, but
But it
I
also
don't,
runs through
hold on one second.
wetlands.
But I don't know, Will, what you think we would need to proceed on that if we decided to do so.
We would have to. I mean, it would be the same process of advertising, blah, 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 but I think we'd also probably have to either figure out a way to quantify or get some sort of study on, like, are we getting a benefit out of this? Not to sound so blunt, but kind of what you said, it's like, are all of our streams already in a resource area? Do we want to dedicate time and money? I'm being way too simplistic right now, but I think you get what I'm saying. Do we want to dedicate time and money to have a new resource area, have a new definition, but have the same effect? I don't know if that's actually true,
Yeah.
right? But
So I guess can we direct the natural resources staff to look at the GIS and to figure it out for us?
I think that's the way. I mean, we think we know where the potential streams are.
Well, especially because
Streams.
NRD is
Call
already
them
doing,
streams.
they're already doing the stream monitoring.
Exactly.
Lower quality monitoring for those, so.
I think that's a pretty easily answered question. I have my vibes-based analysis prepared for you right now, which is that they're probably all resource area, but confirmation.
Yeah, let's look at it on the map, our GIS, and then go from there. I also, if we make that a resource area, it's gonna do some weird things. It's gonna be a resource area that's applicable under the local bylaw and regulations only. It's not the only time we've done that. We've done that before. So like, right now, or in our past regulations, it was even more significant, but right now, the size of an isolated vegetated wetland that qualifies as an isolated vegetated wetland under the Nantucket regulations is less than the size that's qualified under the Wetlands Protection Act. And prior to January 1st, there was no size at all. If you had a puddle in your yard that was, that met the three characteristics of a wetland through soils, vegetation, and hydrology, and, stayed wet for at least 5 months of the year and had all the other requirements, that was a wetland. So now we changed it to have a minimum, I think, 500 square foot requirement, but I think the Wetlands Protection is 5,000. So it's not the only time we've done things like this, and there's a lot of performance standards we have that are very different than the state as well. We just have to be sure that when we do this, it's doing something that's beneficial for the resources.
And not just.
Otherwise, we're just writing a lot of interesting language that, is great, but it doesn't actually do anything for us, so. I mean, there is, I guess, a argument to say, well, okay, the streams now are where they are, but maybe there'll be more streams in the future. So it might make sense to lay the groundwork now and get the resource area into place and the definitions or whatever. But I think we have to start by looking at the GIS and trying to figure that out. Or does that make sense to you?
Yeah, if there's nothing to be gained, if we look into it and we find out there's nothing to be gained, I'm fine with that. It just irked me at the time that they were calling it a stream and we weren't calling it a stream, so I'm happy with just looking into it and seeing.
I mean, I think there are potential things that could be gained. I mean, I think even if the area is the exact same, there are performance standards that would probably apply to streams that wouldn't apply to something like a BBW, with like fish passage or other wildlife, things like that. So I think there are some points that can be made about, is it worth it even if the area is exactly 100% identical? Or
Gotta be eels.
or could you just add that performance standard to BBW with the thing that says, in the case of running water, this performance standard applies,
That also might be-
Yeah, and that was my main thing too, was that DEP has a stream handbook, and it's almost exclusively for how you build a crossing over it. And to make sure
Crossing
that,
standards, yeah.
yeah, the culvert's adequate or whatever you build over it, that was the thing I was looking at the time.
So I think we'll direct the staff to look into that and give us an update for our next meeting.
Please don't think about it here.
Is that good?
Some of them are,
Yeah, just a couple.
but they're mostly running in and out of wetlands.
I'm happy with that.
Okay, that sounds good.
If
Yes,
you,
Joe.
if you added streams, a section on streams, would that say you delete the section on rivers?
Right now, our river section on the Nantucket regulation says there's no rivers on Nantucket.
It's one of my favorite.
I think we could just,
We got ditches, we
Yeah.
got streams.
I think we
got
could probably
culverts.
keep that in to make sure that we're not running afoul of the riverfront area definitions of the WPA, but we could add
Just
a
direct
thing about streams. So I don't think we would delete it, but we would just add.
I can give you guys a fun story
True.
about that another time, about our
Anyways,
rivers.
are we all good on all this? Good on all the regulation stuff? Okay, let's talk policies and procedures then. So, Will, do you have a checklist for us, or is there things that you want me to talk about, or what?
Probably just
I don't have any specific notes from me for policies and procedures. I did have a couple people brought up some ideas about maybe more consent items. I think we can talk about that. And then I sort of jokingly, but I'm more than happy to get placards for us. I think we deserve placards.
I was serious about that.
I
guys are
have a
serious.
placard at the office somewhere, but we haven't been using it for in-person because I'm the only one with one. So that would be weird, but
funny.
yes, it would be funny, but yes, we should,
Badge.
we should get the placards remade. Prior to COVID, every commissioner had placards. When, new commissioners came onto the board, they got placards right away, so yes, let's get placards. It's better for us and for the public.
If anything, it'll help us with our seating chart.
Yes.
I remember picking them up and giving them back to the staff, some somewhere.
Yeah, there are some, a lot of them, well, we still have the backers, but a lot of them have people's names on it who aren't on the commission anymore.
And I
Yeah,
think
go
it's,
ahead.
it's funny, but like, I'm kind of making a joke of this, but the placard thing, there's something to the ceremony or like legitimacy of when you get voted onto a or appointed to a commission and then you're presented your placard.
Official nature.
Yes,
It's-
it makes
there's an
it
official nature.
official and professional.
Yeah, and you start a new job and you get all your new crisp shirts.
I would,
Part of the squad now.
Does the town have a machine that they made them in-house, or?
I hope so.
The
They have a
Nantucket office-
whole,
Nantucket office.
they have a
probably
whole
did 'em.
sign,
Get it figured out.
sign warehouse
No, he
thing where they
doesn't do
could.
that stuff, we get them in from,
Should we wait until after the select board makes their decision?
At this
They'd probably
point,
take that long.
probably, yeah.
it'll take that long to get them.
No, you guys are all coming back.
We'll
get it
figure out
done.
whatever the staff wants to do.
I'll get it done.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so,
And then the blanket, if we're gonna do.
yeah,
consent,
we'll talk about that in a
consent.
second, but, there was the placards, there was the consent thing, and then you said one more other thing?
That was what I had,
Okay.
and pizza.
Yes.
What?
I think pizza at every meeting sounds great. No,
We
so,
can't pay for it through the office. I
we
just-
cannot,
We already
yeah,
went through that with the
yeah.
HGC.
I
We tried.
We gotta do it.
So,
ourselves. They
I-
deliver-
I have one.
They deliver.
yes,
it, by
John,
the
go
way.
ahead.
And I think Will's already started doing this, but all of our standard conditions that apply, the no cultivars and all that stuff, you're starting to put those in all the findings, right? And so we don't have to sit there and watch it happen during the meeting.
Well, that's-
Yeah, we're
Yes,
gonna
but we
talk,
can go a step
we're gonna talk
further.
about that in a second.
Oh, okay,
But
thanks.
prior to talking about that, I think I have a general point that I think, we made a lot of changes to the policies and procedures, and we told people about that in the hearings we had. But we never posted those on the website. I think after we update this time, it should be on the website so everyone knows what to expect. Applicants, the public, whatever, especially like the thing about having to apply for or obtain all permits before coming to the Concom. that tripped a lot of people up.
Yeah, it did.
I'm not sure it would have made a difference if that was on our website or not, but if, at least if it was, it would have given us a little bit more, you know,
Street cred.
a little bit more credibility with saying, you know, it's up there. We talked about this in the meeting, we posted it, so let's get that document updated with the updates we want, formatted in a good way, and posted on the website. You know, we have the side column that has the regulations. Under that, we'll create a new side column that says policies and procedures, and we'll put it up there. Yes, Will, go ahead.
I was gonna say I had a note somewhere, that whatever we have from a result, or whatever we get out of this procedures and policies meeting, I'd like to make, it might not be long enough to call it a handbook, but if we have enough pages, I'm gonna try to make it an official, legitimate handbook. There's old ones, there's a really old procedures handbook, but I think we could use a heavy redo.
Yes.
Probably.
Okay, that
That's
sounds
for
good.
me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the document that we were working off of last year with the updates is good. And putting it into the handbook format makes sense, but let's do all that and get it posted. So on the item about voting orders of conditions as a block.
Yeah.
So we changed the procedures to have non-waiver projects called out and then voted as a block. But we didn't do that for order of conditions. I don't think anybody has suggested, and if they have suggested, we're gonna shut them down. But I don't think anybody has suggested having any of the waiver projects voted as a block. The waiver projects get talked about individually, they get voted on individually. It's the non-waiver orders of conditions could go through the same process as the NOI. So what would happen is prior to the meeting, town staff and the chair of the commission would look through each of the orders of conditions and draft them in the way they see fit. And then the one thing that needs to happen in order for this to be successful is the orders need to be sent out earlier in the day or maybe even on Wednesday.
Or like the week before.
Or the week before, yeah.
Friday.
Much earlier than Thursday at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
They need to be
Yes.
sent out in advance.
Otherwise, we have to.
Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
That way, everyone can look at them. And then at the meeting, what would happen when we got to orders of conditions for non-waiver projects? We'd do the same thing that we did in the NOI. We'd call out all the numbers. If anyone wanted to review one of those individually, we would review them individually. Any of those that did not get called would be approved and issued with as written with the conditions that the chair and the staff put together.
That's how we usually handle it to HTC. If you get a problem with one, somebody pulls it. Otherwise, they look at them over the weekend and everybody goes, and they blanket vote them on Tuesday.
So, do any commissioners have issues or concerns about that?
No, I think it's a
No.
good idea.
I love
Yes,
it.
Will, go ahead.
I would say, I don't know if you have to mention this specifically if you make a motion, but I would say if we were gonna do that, I would be more than happy to commit to Friday, because that way, anything missed on those, like the Friday before the meeting, sorry. Cause anything missed, then we can iron out any little details potentially before the meeting and have everybody happier with what's drafted before the actual start of the meeting. That would give us like a bunch of time, and it works with the submission deadline for everything, so I'll be able to have it all.
That sounds great.
But
You want us to vote on that, or we don't have to vote on that? It's policy.
I'm not sure we need votes
I don't
on
think
these
we need to
things.
vote
It's
on
just
policies.
policies of the commission. I don't think we voted on any of these things when we had the last policy updates. We just agreed to them.
Yep.
But if the staff disagrees, then we can vote on it. But
And it's available to talk about at the meeting if anybody wants to, so.
yeah.
Yep.
yeah,
And these changes can go into place effective immediately if we want,
Yep.
or we could say it's already close to the,
Immediately.
it's already close to the, July turnover, we could leave it to then, but, I'm more than willing to have them start immediately.
Same here.
I think it's a good thing for them to start immediately. It's gonna, if there's new commissioners, it's gonna be new procedures to them as well,
They'll just settle in.
so. yeah,
and at least
it
some
is.
of us will be
Oh,
well versed at that point.
Okay.
okay.
So Will, that's good with you, and commissioners, that's good with everybody?
All good.
John, that's good with you?
Yes.
So we'll do that starting in the next meeting. And then if you could get all the changes that we've made now put into that handbook and then when you're done with it, posted, that would be great.
And in interim, I'm gonna at least try to get, because it'll probably take some time to update the actual handbook, but in the interim, I can quickly get a change summary or like a bullet pointed one sheet procedures document out there, like within the next couple days, but the handbook will probably take a little time. If everybody's cool with that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing.
that's fine. If it takes time, it's fine. I mean, it's not up now and it's not up next week. It's nothing different, so.
Question.
Yes, go
Where are we next
ahead.
week? Are we back into the tin can?
No, we're here again, I think.
I was like, don't make me look up the schedule.
Yeah, I have.
I
the
think we're here.
I have the posting, but I think I looked at it, I think it was here.
I think we're here.
Are we back here permanently now, or?
Hopefully, but I doubt it. Yeah, we're here next week on May 8th.
A little more.
Well, town meeting and FinCom are pretty much over as far as meeting all the time in our space. It was SHAB that was the problem.
I think we should talk to the town administration and request that we're here permanently. On our website, we say we meet here. So, you know,
And I
that's
think
a
we SHAB back
cause for
over there.
concern. As I mentioned before, we're one of the most important boards, committees or commission on Nantucket. And certainly one that typically has a large public audience. So meeting here is, I would say, required at this point. Okay. Anything else? We're good on regulations for now. We'll get Will to send out the schedule and poll for additional meetings. We're good on policies and procedures for now. We're gonna have, yeah, so we'll get those meetings, and then we also already have another meeting in October. Hopefully it doesn't go that long, but if any updates, right, if we get into the fact where any of the updates need extended legal opinions or whatever, then we have that meeting already scheduled in October. Anything else? Will?
Just want to make sure to clarify, that's two special meetings to schedule. One's enforcement specific and one is reg specific, or do you want to?
I think we're all good with the regs, just writing
Okay.
writing the language. It's really the enforcement part of the regulations that we need a special meeting on. I think it's just writing up the actual language and then having commissioners look at it, and then we could probably just do that at the actual hearing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not major changes. We're talking about changing,
No, like
what,
6
three
things.
things, yeah,
All right, cool.
maybe 5 things. It's not like last time when we had
Yeah,
tons of things to go over.
so we
with minor
will,
updates.
I'll put 2 meetings out, though. We'll schedule 2. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, it'd be great
Okay.
to have a public meeting that town council could be at, talk about all the enforcement stuff, get all that figured out, and then to review the language that has changed about these regulations. And then the second would be the public hearing, I think, would be ready to go. But if
Yeah.
we're not ready to go, we could always convert that public
Very
hearing
easy.
into a public meeting and go from there.
And
Not a big deal.
I had one more comment that I almost forgot. You're not gonna see a doodle poll. I keep saying doodle poll, but we're totally using something else. And just call me if you have any problems, just call me. I'll even fill it out for you. I'm gonna get town council availability before I even come up with dates for
Yep.
that. So
Yeah.
I'll wait until I have an answer with their calendar. So you might not see that poll until next week, but I'll be
fine.
starting on that tomorrow.
And if they're on off Thursdays, you gotta check when the ZBA's meeting in here. That's usually impacts us.
We'll have
We'll
some,
figure it
that's
out.
the thing, like, we can't be picky with the rooms on those off dates. We're
Yeah.
just gonna land where we land.
And
but-
yeah, we can meet virtually if we need to as well.
Well, next Thursday, I believe, is the ZBA meeting in here, so just check.
We'll figure that out. All right, so Under other business, there's committee reports, commissioners' reports, and staff reports. Unless something is time sensitive, I'm gonna request that we keep those till next meeting.
I have one,
Go ahead.
because it technically could be in enforcements, regs too. I'll have to check her availability. This was kind of a last minute thing. But Leah let me know this morning, that CRAC is kind of endeavoring, to suggest updates to local bylaws, regs, give some kind of guidance to boards, commissions, committees, for a whole bunch of reasons, but to promote coastal resiliency. There's an expert from Hui, the old Sea Grant, and they are more than willing, in fact, very interested to come present to us, whether that be a special meeting or whether we want to invite them to the next regs meeting. Seems like it's kind of some specific stuff that might be helpful for us to hear about, like how our regs can impact zoning laws and how they can impact what we try to do, and a lot. So if we're interested in that, that's something that's on the table that I wanted to throw out there because it's directly regs related, but it's specific, and we do have this ability to get this person from Cape Cod Extension / Woods Hole.
Yes, having them at the next regulations meeting sounds like the proper choice. All right.
And if anyone's interested,
Heard it here. Tim likes crap.
yep. If anyone's interested, that slide deck that she presented, Shannon Holt presented for that meeting was an October CRAC meeting, and there's slide decks online, so you can look at it.
This. I think the slide deck was sent by Tim to everybody, honestly.
I haven't seen it, so I'd like to.
Okay. With that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Mike Mizzarelli.
Aye.
RJ Turcott.
Hi.
Linda Williams.
Aye.
Joe Pandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Hi.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for a productive meeting, and we'll be continuing this spring. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys.